So John Lord is one of my keyboard heroes. The first time I heard him, I was a little kid and I'd taken classical piano lessons and I heard John Lord play this. And I went, what is that and how can I do that thing that he does? He had this ability to take classical music and rock music and fuse them, and he ran his Hammond through Marshalls and had this sound that was just, I was like, wow, I want to do that for the rest of my life. So I want to talk about John Lord today, and I actually got to meet John Lord one time. He rented this very B3 when his C3 blew up, and he played this organ, and I got to meet him and talk to him about all things Hammond and music, and he was such a gentleman. So let's talk about John Lord today. So one of the hardest things about learning to play keyboards in a band is learning to play with guitar players and how to make that sound good and how to mix yourself with a guitar player so you kind of sound like a guitar player. And John Lord was a master of this. When he comes in, it starts off with Ritchie Blackmore playing this lick. And somewhere about here, John Lord comes in on his organ and it sounds like another electric guitar has entered the picture. And he's playing with Ritchie Blackmore and it's fat and it sounds amazing. Every time that this guy laid his hands on this machine, he managed to make it sound mean and make it sound like rock and roll. So many of his intros, like Space Truckin', just sounds awesome. It sounds like an electric guitar. He also ran through Marshall, so he had a lot more distortion on it than I probably do now. But whatever, I'll kind of get to the concept of it. So when we first learn to play piano or learn to play organ, we're taught to play our chords with thirds in them, like major triads, like this. If I play a G chord, it's got a G, a B, and a D in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play Smoke on the Water with the thirds in the chords. Kind of sounds like this. Now, it's kind of something wrong with that, you know? Kind of reminds me of like the wheels on the bus, which isn't really rock and roll, which isn't really Deep Purple. So what John Lord did was he did something very simple but very, very important. He removed the thirds from all of his chords and played all of his chords in fifths. So if I was to play a G chord as a fifth without the third, it would look kind of like this. Okay, so this is what the Smoke on the Water would sound like played in fifths. Still not quite right. He took it one step further, and I kind of figured this out over time. And he would put the fifth, on the bottom of the chord. Looks like this. So that's how he would voice a G chord. The G with the fifth on the bottom. I call them inverted fifths. And it sounds like this. And that's what he did. Inverted fifths, and it's so important. And I'm going to take that one step further, but before I do, I'm going to turn my Leslie up to 10 so I can sound like John Lord. That should do it. Insta rock and roll. Yeah. Okay. So a lot of these classic rock songs by Led Zeppelin or the Stones or Deep Purple, a lot of people say don't play blues scales, don't play minor pentatonic scales. I kind of think that's a bunch of bullshit because all of these songs are written on minor pentatonic and blues scales. So all of the songs that we grew up with. So you actually have to play them. You have to address them. They are extremely important and they are a part of every musician's vocabulary. So the way that John Lord does it is he takes a minor pentatonic scale And I'm going to do a minor pentatonic scale actually in D minor because it's very easy to see. It's all white notes. A minor pentatonic scale, if you've never heard of this before, first of all, you can refer to my minor pentatonic lesson to learn more about minor pentatonic scales if you've never heard of them before. But this is kind of how it breaks down. If I go into D and I do a minor pentatonic scale, it's going to look kind of like this. It's called a pentatonic scale because there's 5 notes in the scale. And the notes are D, F, G, A, C, and D. Some people, like myself, think of this in numbers, and I think of this like this. 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, 1. Because for me, it's all an alteration of a major scale. A major scale looks like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And I'm taking the 1 from the major scale, flatting the 3rd, 4, 5, flatting the 7, C, D. There's the minor pentatonic scale. Now what John Lord did was he made inverted fifths out of all of these notes. So he would take the first note being D, and he would put the 5th of D on the bottom, which is an A. And he would go up to the next note of the minor pentatonic scale, which is F, and put a C on the bottom, and create an inverted 5th there. Then he'd go up to the next note of the minor pentatonic, which is a G. Put a D on the bottom, which is the 5th of G. Then he would go up to A, and put a 5th on the bottom, which is E. Then we go up to C, and put a 5th on the bottom, which is G. And what happens is it creates this. So that's a D minor pentatonic scale, the way that John Lord would play it in inverted fifths. A song that John Lord plays, which is one of my faves, Perfect Strangers, from the album Perfect Strangers. I love it. It's one of the first times that he kind of started playing through Leslie's again after playing strictly through Marshalls for a long time. So that was kind of cool to hear him make that change and that change in his tone. So I'm going to try to get a similar tone to what he did on the record. And this is the intro of the song. And it just goes up a D minor pentatonic scale in inverted fifths. D, C, D, F, D, C, D, F, G, A, G, A, C, A, G, F, D, C, G, D. And that's the song. That's the sound of John Lord. I'm going to expand on this a little bit further because there is some fingering difficulties when trying to do this. And if you're coming off the piano and you're playing Hammond for the first time, this is one of the issues that you'll face because there's no sustain pedal here. So in order to join these notes, you have to do something that I call crab walking. You can also refer to my lesson on crab walking where I specifically talk about this, but an example is I'm already thinking about where my fingers are going to go. And then I'm moving my fingers to the next spot and crab walking. Crab walking. And that's the sound. That's the sound that man defined, the sound of rock and roll, and even in songs like Space Trucking or Highway Star, this is what he does. This is how he plays. He plays in inverted fifths. And if you're ever playing with a guitar player or you're ever playing with a band, this is hands down one of the most valuable tools that I've ever found for playing Hammond organ. and I've used it again and again and again through my career on sessions, on albums, on stage. Check it out. It's pure gold. I hope you enjoy it. I got a call in the early 90s. It was a call. I was going out to walk my dog. It was about 9 o'clock at night, and I got a panicked call from a promoter, and they said, there's a Deep Purple concert. John Lord's Hammond organ, which came from Europe, was plugged in wrong with North American AC, and they blew it up. And the road manager of the band told the promoter, no John Lord, no Deep Purple. So they were panicked because there were thousands of people standing in the field waiting to hear Deep Purple. So he said, do you have a B3 that we can rent? And I said, yes, absolutely. They came and picked up my B3. We went down to the festival site. They put the B3 on the big forklift up on stage. They put it down. They ran it into his marshals and everything. And I remember his keyboard tech came out and just went, and the whole crowd just went. It was so awesome. I got to watch the concert from side stage, and I got to go backstage and meet him. And he was so gracious, he was so kind, and he was so humble, and he just said to me, I bet you're glad I didn't rock your organ, because if anybody knows John Lord, they know that he would put his knee underneath the B3 and rock it back and forth so that the tone generator inside would smash against the walls of the organ, making it go in and out of tune. And he said, yeah, I'm too old for that. And he signed this B3, so that was pretty special for me too. He said, thanks for saving us, John Lord, Deep Purple. It was awesome.